Thank you, Ma'am Chi, and thank you everyone for the warm welcome. And I also thank everyone, yung mga students po natin, and engineers and PEE for having me in your seminar or training. So I'll be introducing the Philippine electricity markets to everyone. So as you would know, our Philippine electricity markets is actually composed of two markets. We have the WESM, the wholesale part, wholesale electricity spot market, or what we call the WESM, and the retail competition and open access. So I'll be discussing some introductory concepts of WESM and ARCOA. So if you have questions, please, I don't know if you have an open forum section later, but you can also put them in the chat box. Or
Yes,
you can
ma'am. There will be a question and answer and you have to be ready. Baka personal ang mga tanong nila sa'yo.
Noted, ma'am. I hope I can answer them later.
Okay.
So the legal background for WESM is provided in RA 9136 or the IPIRA. So Section 30 of RA 9136 provides for the establishment of the WESM. So later we will discuss what is WESM and what is the commodity being traded in WESM. So WESM ultimately is the centralized venue for trading of large-scale buyers and sellers of electricity where price is based on the interaction of demand and supply. So simply, WESM is just a market and our commodity is electricity basically. And the market operator for WESM is our company, the Independent Electricity Market Operator of the Philippines. Okay. So why WESM? This is actually a response to the crisis that happened in the 1990s. So this is from a case decided by the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court said that the new thrust is to tap private capital for the exhaustion and improvement of as the large government debt and the highly capital intensive
Mayroong seminar mamaya na.
have long been acknowledged as the critical constraints to the program. So to attract private investments, largely foreign, the jaded structure of the industry had to be addressed. So later we will discuss bakit ba nagkaroon ng RA 9136 or REPIRA, ano ba yung nangyari before, why it prompted the government to have WESM. But basically, WESM as a market for electricity, it provides an option for customers to buy electricity at a cheaper price. So as you would know, we have generators, we have customers in distribution utilities. And now, actually, our customers are distribution utilities and large customers. For example, we have directly connected customers like steel plants. They can now buy directly electricity from WESM. And sometimes the prices in WESM is much cheaper than what we have or what the generators offer. It also provides a venue of generators to sell their power outside power supply agreements. Thus, it lowers barriers of entry for prospective investors in the energy industry. So before po kasi, if you're an investor, if you want to build a power plant, you have to have a contract with the distribution utility already. So you cannot enter the energy industry without that contract with distribution utility. But now that we have WESM, you now actually have a choice to sell your power directly to WESM. And it also gives or provides transparency in the market results and prices for the information of stakeholders, potential investors, and the public. So we are actually mandated to publish everything. Ano po ba yung presyo sa market? Ano ba yung demand natin sa Luzon and Visayas? So all of that, we provide that for the information of everyone. So if you would notice sa news po, parang sinasabi nila na mataas ang presyo sa WESM, ito yung demand ng WESM. This is because before kasi merong barrier, hindi natin nakikita yung prices of electricity at the generation, transmission, distribution level. But now that we have WESM, we provide all information that we have for everyone. And actually in 2019, we have 315 megawatts. That is average hourly merchant. So direct po sila nagbebenta sa WESM. What is WESM? So it provides for wholesale. It pertains to large quantities or volume. So ang nakikita po natin dito is grid level. So nag-forecast po kami ng demand, for example, for whole Luzon and Visayas. So it's around 12,000 megawatts. So that's why we call it wholesale, because we're talking about large quantities or volumes. And the commodity that we trade in WESM is purely electricity. We also have the concept of spot or transactions settled are only those that are not covered by contracts. So we have contracts by generators and distribution utilities like, for example, Meralco, Batulec, or Veco. So iba po yun sa spot natin. So pwede po kayong bumili directly. If you're a distribution utility, you can buy directly from the spot market. And actually, as published by Meralco in their news, 11% of their demand comes from WESM directly. And this is a market, again, WESM is a market or a venue for buying or selling electricity. So I'm sure all of you knows this already, so I'll just go through it very quickly. So demand is highly variable. We don't know when a person would use electricity. We can predict that, but not with a 100% accuracy. So everyone will use their aircon when it's hot, or they would charge their phones. We don't know exactly when they will use electricity. So it's highly variable, but we can predict that. Electricity right now on the grid level is not economically storable. So we don't have a lot of large fuel cells or batteries right now. We have some. We have, for example, Masinloc, which is 10 megawatts, and I think we're commissioning now the Kabankalan, which is 40 megawatts. But we don't have batteries yet of large quantities that would make electricity economically storable. And thus, because of those characteristics, electricity must be generated when needed. Okay, so how is electricity delivered from generators to consumers? And I'm sure everyone knows this already, so I'll just go through it very quickly. So you have power plant, it generates electricity, and it would go down to our consumer and distribution franchise areas. And if you have embedded power plants, that would go directly to the distribution utilities franchise area. So WESM is actually in the middle of that, because this is where our sellers, our generators, and buyers trade electricity prior to the production and delivery. So before a generator can produce electricity, we say at particular interval what generators or what list of generators would run. For example, it's around 3 p.m. right now, it's 2:30. So we would produce a list of generators that would run, for example, for 3 p.m., for 4 p.m. So that is the role of WESM. We provide the list of generators that would run for every hour. Okay. And the NGCP right now, it's the system operator. So we are the market operator. We provide the list of generators that would run every hour. And we also provide the prices of that generation. But the system operator, the NGCP, they do the real-time power balancing. So they do the real-time dispatching. They would call the generators that they need to run based on the list of generators that we, the market operator, provided to them. So how does WESM affect our electricity bill? So again, the generation company and the distribution utility, they have what they call the power supply agreement. It has to go through the CSP, or competitive selective process. But another avenue for distribution utilities is actually to buy directly from WESM at WESM prices. So that is what we call the spot quantities. So you can see the WESM, the effect of WESM in our generation charge. However, even though this is how WESM affects our electricity rates, it actually also affects the dispatching of generators. Again, because for a generator to run, it must be included in the list of generators that WESM would provide the NGCP. Okay. So the generation companies may also sell their power directly to WESM. So that was what was I talking about earlier, that 319 megawatts of 2019 is actually a generation directly sold to WESM. So generation companies can do that as well. So what are the WESM players? Who are the players in the wholesale electricity spot market? So we have the trading participants, again, we have the generation companies, and we have our customers. But we also have service providers. So again, in every market, there are auxiliary items or services that has to be provided in order for the market to work. So we have generation companies, they're the seller of electricity, and customers, which are buyers of electricity. And we also have network service provider, because again, we need a grid in order to transmit that power from generation to customers. Our network service provider right now is the NGCP, or the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, for Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And we also have ancillary service providers, or reserve. So reserve, from the term itself, is a reserve capacity in which, just in case anything happens, for example, a generator would fail or a transmission line would go on outage, anything can happen on an intra-hour basis. So that's why we have the reserve capacity or ancillary services. We have spinning and non-spinning reserve in order to provide reliability and security to the grid. And we also have what they call the metering service provider. So in order to account for the energy that we have to buy, that we have to sell, we need to also have the metering service provider. For the grid, that's the system operator as well. So madaming hat si NGCP. So it's a system operator. It is also right now it's operating we don't have a reserve market right now, but it is the one that contracts our ancillary service providers, and it is also performing metering services for the grid. So yun po yung role ni NGCP. So we have trading participants, we have the scheduled generating units, and self-scheduled generators. So pag sinabi nating scheduled generating units, ito yung mga conventional plants natin or malaking plants. For example, Suwal Power Plant, Calaca Power Plant, mga nakikita nating power plants sa Batangas. So usually those are scheduled generating units. And usually there are more than 0.1% of the peak load in a particular reserve region. So we have two reserve regions, Luzon and Visayas, and more than 0.1% of the peak load. Ang peak load po natin usually around 11,000 or 12,000 in Luzon, but it lowered kasi nung pandemic, bumaba yung demand natin. So we also have self-scheduled generator, meaning ito yung usually maliliit na generators natin, which has a nameplate rating less than 0.1% of our peak load, or 10% of the size of interconnection facilities, whichever is lower. Mass dispatch generating unit, which are intermittent renewable energy resources. For example, we have wind and solar, and run-of-river hydro. Those are mass dispatch generating units. And we'll also have priority dispatch generating unit. So it uses biomass fuel, which is under the feed-in tariff system. So we made a distinction when it comes to smaller generators, because as you would know, if you are a solar, if you're a wind, because of a law, RA 9513 or the Renewable Energy Act, we need to prioritize those generators, those renewable energy resources. That's why we made the distinction. Okay, so again, our trading participants on the customer side, we have distribution utilities. Our PDUs are private distribution utilities. We have, for example, Meralco or VECO and other private distribution utilities that we have. We also have electric cooperatives, like, for example, Batele. So those are electric cooperatives which are not private. So cooperative yung kanilang corporation scheme. We also have bulk users or end users that are directly connected to the grids. Usually, ito yung mga customers na malalaking consumption. For example, mga steel plants natin or manufacturing plants. So those are bulk users or end users that is directly connected to the grid. Retail electricity suppliers, later I will talk about that, and contestable customers. So before kasi lahat tayo captive kung kanino tayo nakakonect, for example, nakakonect tayo kay Meralco, so wala na tayong choice ng supply of power natin because we are a captive market. But the EPIRA, our law, actually introduced a concept of contestable customers. So later I will discuss also more on that. So we have also levels of membership, direct members and indirect members. So mostly these are on the settlement and financial transactions. Okay, so how is electricity traded in USM? So generators would submit energy offers online. So meaning if you're a generator, you have the obligation to submit an offer. How much can you, what is the quantity that you can produce and at what cost? For example, you're a generator A, and you can produce, for example, 1 megawatt for 2,000 pesos or 1 peso per kilowatt hour. And for example, generator B would offer, no, I can produce actually at 50 megawatts at 2 pesos or 2,000 pesos. So those generators would need to submit their offers in USM. And through that, we matches the energy offers with our demand. So we also do the large scale forecast in Luzon and Visayas. So we do that every hour. We have demand forecasting that we have several USM in order to forecast our demand for Luzon and Visayas. So we have generator offers, which says that this is the quantity that we can produce at this price. Then we also have the demand forecasting. And we match that in order to arrive at a list of generators that would run for the specific hour or interval. And we do that by considering their offers, meaning if you have an offer in the market, we choose the most economical or cheapest generators first. So that is the principle in WESM, that we provide the list of generators that is actually the cheapest one. So prices of electricity and schedules of generators are determined using the ERC-approved price determination methodology. So how we do the pricing in WESM is actually approved or regulated by the Energy Regulatory Commission. So this is the price determination methodology. But we have a new one right now for the enhanced WESM design. So what are the guiding principles in WESM? So first, it must be gross pool. Later, I will discuss each concept one by one. Locational marginal pricing, net settlement, energy and resource optimization, demand bidding, and self-commitment. So first, what is gross pool? So all energy is traded through the WESM. It is mandatory regardless of whether the trading participant is fully contracted, partially contracted, or merchant. So even if you have a specific contract, for example, you're a generator and you have a specific contract with the distribution utility, it doesn't matter. You have to offer your quantities in WESM. You have to do that in order to forecast or to provide the schedules and prices more accurately. So even if you're fully contracted, for example, your 100 megawatt generator, and 100 megawatt of that is contracted already to your distribution utility, for example, Meralco. Even if that is the case, you still have to reflect that in the WESM. So that is why we call it gross pool. So energy offer for full capacities must be provided to WESM. So whether you're fully contracted, partially contracted, if you're, for example, 100 megawatts, 50 megawatts, it's not contracted yet. So all of that must be reflected in WESM. Or if, for example, if you're a merchant, most especially, if you're going to provide all of your power to WESM, then we have to see that. So everything you need to offer that. We actually have a rule in WESM. It's the must offer rule. So you have to offer what you have at maximum capacity to the WESM. Locational marginal pricing. So again, we do not only provide the list of generators that would run every hour. We also provide for the prices of that electricity. And we do that through what we call the locational marginal pricing. So it's a marginal price computed at each node or location in the power system to reflect cost of transmission line, loss, or congestion, or both. So we have the formula for that. This is the marginal price, the cost of loss, and cost of congestion. So we incorporate not only the cost of electricity or generation, but also what is the cost of loss and the cost of congestion. So if you do the power flow, so we have the swing bus, it would be complicated to discuss it, but that would be the basis for our system marginal price normally. And we also have the cost of loss. So we also look at the power system. We also look at the status of the grid in order to come up with our cost of losses and cost of congestion. And net settlement. So again, gross pool but net settlement. So we only settle the spot quantities which are bought directly in WESM. So for example, Meralco said it's their statement. They said that 11% of their power comes from WESM. So we only settle that 11%. So spot quantity, we settle that based on WESM prices. And if you have a contract, then that is settled outside WESM already. So gross pool, everything, all megawatt quantities should be reflected in WESM. But when it comes to settlement, only those that are bought directly in WESM, we only settle those parts. Okay. So energy and resource optimization, we don't have this right now. But again, there are actually two commodities supposedly in WESM. We have energy component and the reserve capacity. So again, reserve is different because you don't normally or at normal situation, you don't run or you don't expect the reserve capacities to run. So naka-reserve lang siya. In case something happens, again, if for example, a generator would fall or would fail, then you need that reserve capacity to replace that generation which failed at that particular hour. So we have reserve and we have energy. And supposedly, we have this concept which we call the optimization, in which we find the best list of generators for reserve and for energy that is actually the most economical or cheapest. But again, this is not yet implemented. So we have energy right now in WESM. But for reserve capacities, it is actually the NGCP, which contracts for our reserve. Demand bidding, so customers would be able to say the maximum price that they are willing to pay. So this is another concept that is not yet in the WESM. So normally, if you're a customer, on our perspective, we really don't have a choice kung magkano yung babayaran natin sa kuryente, right? But for example, if you have demand bidding, theoretically, a customer can say na, if the price of electricity is at certain level, I'd rather be shut down. So sa mga malalaking customers, for example, if you're a manufacturing plant and you have a generator of your own, and then the prices in the market, for example, happens to be 5 pesos already, and you can run your generator at 3 pesos. So you would rather run your own generator than buy electricity from the grid. So theoretically, that is demand bidding. You can cut off from the grid at a certain price already in the market. So again, this is theoretically because we don't have this yet in the market. But we are actually, our systems, the market systems of IMAP, our company, is actually capable of that, of the demand bidding. But we don't have yet the rules and regulations and guidelines to implement demand bidding. Okay, self-commitment, I love this word, self-commitment. So trading participants are responsible for the management of their technical operations, unit commitment decisions, and other market risks through the submission of offers to WESM. So if you're a generator, you do all your strategies, you do all your negotiation, and when you submit that to the IMAP for scheduling, then you already committed that quantities. Okay. So how do we do the dispatch scheduling and pricing in WESM? So again, we have the trading participants. They would submit offers and bids. And the market operator, the IMAP, will actually have the market network model ready and the demand forecast. So what is the market network model or the M&M? The M&M is actually like a map. It tells us where our generators are, where our customers are, what are our transmission lines that connects them, what are our reserve regions and other protective equipment in the grid. So that is the market network model. And we always update that every minute because we have what we call the SCADA or the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. So the SCADA of the NGCP would provide us data, what is happening in the grid. For example, what transmission lines are online, what are offline, what are the ratings of these transmission lines, which generators are online. So all of those updated data, we integrate that in our market network model. And we also do the demand forecasting. And Jeff, actually, one of his job before is to do the demand forecast for whole Luzon and Visayas. So we have that demand forecast, we have the M&M, and we put that in the system, which we call the market management system. After that, we provide the individual schedules of the generators. Generator A, you would run at 100 megawatts for 3 p.m. Generator B, you would run at 50 megawatts for 3 p.m. So those are the individual schedules. And you also have the accompanying prices for each of that. And also the system operator will provide us with the real-time system status, or what we call the SCADA. And we also provide them the schedules of all these generators. So how do we do or determine which generator should run? So merit ordering, again, we need to provide the cheapest generators, the most economical list of generators that would run in a particular interval. So the merit ordering is the process of ranking generation capacities from the cheapest offer to the highest offer. So here we have the demand. let me use our here. We have the demand. Sorry, I'm not good at drawing. I'll just clearly. We have the demand. Again, we forecast this. It's the market operator which provides for that. And then after that, we now determine which generators would run based on the offers of the power plant. So we stack them first. The cheapest first, the blue one here, the light blue one, to the most expensive one. So we have the demand, which we forecast. Then we have our offers, our quantities and prices. Then we would have the market clearing price or the MCP. So earlier we talked about the locational marginal price or the LMP. So it is actually a summation of the clearing price, the cost of losses, and cost of congestion. So how do we determine the first item, the clearing price? So this is how. So the generator, as you can see here, this blue one, all of them are blue, but the fourth one, the fourth generator here, it is the generator that match the demand. So we stack them first. For example, this is 1 peso, 2 peso, 3 pesos, and 4 pesos. So the 4 peso generator determines our market clearing price. So even if this light blue generator offers 1 peso, the market clearing price is 4 pesos. That would still apply to that generator. So our market clearing price would be 4 pesos. So if we lower the demand, as you can see here, what if our forecasted demand is much lower? Then we can see here that the price would also be lower. So again, the WESM just reflects what would be the price of electricity based on our actual supply-demand condition. So if we have higher demand, then generally we have higher prices of electricity. But on the other hand, if we have lower demand, then we have lower prices of electricity as well. Again, what would happen if a generator went on outage? So I think many of you have heard this from the news or you're directly working from generating plants. Many of our power plants right now are on outage or extended outage. Some of the power plants right now, we have malampaya restriction. So many of our power plants are affected by that as well. So what would happen if we have an outage? So generally, if you have an outage in the system, that would also increase our prices of electricity. So as you can see here, this is how the supply-demand conditions and other items, like for example, plant outages, can affect the prices of our electricity. Okay, so we have what we call the price takers or the self-scheduled generators. The price takers don't offer prices in the market. So kung ano yung market clearing price, that would automatically apply to them. They don't have the power to dictate or to offer prices in the market. So ang ino-offer lang nila sa market is just megawatt. Walang price na involved. So kung ano yung price sa market, that would automatically apply to our self-scheduled generators or mass dispatch, priority dispatch, and non-scheduled generators. So our price takers, they're actually, I'm making this a little more complicated right now, but they're actually automatically scheduled. So as you can see here, if you have more variable renewable energy plants, because again, there are actually mass dispatch generators, we have also priority dispatch generators. You can see here that this is what we call the merit order effect, in which the prices in the market would go lower. So if you have more renewable energy, theoretically, if you have more renewable energy plants in the system, then that would result to lower prices of electricity in WESM. So that's theoretically because here we have not yet incorporated the price of ancillary services. Because again, renewable energy plants, they are dependent on weather. So they're very variable, hence the word variable or intermittent. So we need to have more reserve capacity in order to support that. But theoretically, if you would only see this merit ordering principle, then if you have more renewable energy in the grid, then that would result to lower prices of electricity. So example, if you have generators at these prices, 5 pesos, 2 pesos, 1 pesos, 3.5, and 3 pesos, then again, we do the merit ordering. We stack the generators, which are cheapest first. So our cheapest plant is plant C at 1 pesos. Then we have the demand here at the right side. we have 550 megawatt. So what we will do is we put that the forecast demand as well as the generation offers and then our transmission system in order to come up with our schedules. So generators are dispatched according to their offer price from the cheapest to the most expensive. So as you can see here, the market clearing price would be, I would match the color. I'm not very good at colors. Would be 3.5 pesos. So that would be our market clearing price, right? So the market clearing price is set by the offer price of the plant necessary to serve the demand. So even if, for example, generator C is the cheapest one at 1 pesos, what is the price that would apply to generator C? That would still be the market clearing price, which is 3.5 pesos. So that is how the market clearing price works. So we also have the locational marginal price, which shall consider the marginal price of generation, transmission losses, and congestion. So again, we have the marginal price, cost of losses, and cost of congestion. So this is how we do the pricing in WESM. So as you can see here on the grid on the right side, so each market trading node has different prices. So we have around 3.6 pesos, right? But as you can see here, we have different prices for different nodes because we also incorporate the cost of losses. What is the cost of delivering that power to that particular node? And right now, the connected grids are Luzon and Visayas. So we are still awaiting the completion of the MVIP or the Mindanao Visayas interconnection. But if we have that connected in the grid, then we can see already, if we have just one grid, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, we would see more stable prices already in the whole grid. Okay. So again, system marginal price, we discussed this already, that would be based on merit ordering. And the cost of losses, this is just a simple illustration of how we analyze the cost of losses. For example, you need to, this is carrots actually. So we have, for example, you would need to buy or deliver carrots from Baguio City to Metro Manila. And the cost of that carrot is 3,500 pesos per 50 kilogram. But this is our network. So you have to go through the NLEX, I think, in order to go to Metro Manila, our consumers. So normally, if there is nothing wrong with our transmission system, or in this case, NLEX, then our prices or our cost of losses or cost of congestion would be very low or almost negligible. So that is the case. The cost of transporting the commodity, for example, this one, the cost of transporting carrots towards Metro Manila would represent the cost of losses. For example, we have gas, we have toll. So that is the cost of losses. But for example, if there's congestion in NLEX, for example, anything can happen in NLEX. That's why our prices in our commodity from Baguio cannot go to Metro Manila because of this congestion. So that is how we term the cost of, we analyze the cost of congestion. So because of that, the customers from Metro Manila has to find another supply. So for example, we have Quezon here. But even though Quezon is cheaper, Quezon, not actually cheaper, but even though Quezon is nearer to Metro Manila, it doesn't have congestion. Its cost of supply is actually more expensive, 4,500 for every 50 kilograms. So we can see here that because of that, because we have a congestion in NLEX, it actually drives our prices upwards, or it increased our prices. So that is the cost of congestion in the market. If our transmission line is congested, then we are constrained to find more expensive, possibly more expensive generators than what is actually the cheapest or most economical. So that is how congestion affects our prices of electricity. So again, we have system marginal price, cost of losses, and cost of congestion. So as you can see earlier in one of our slides, we have different nodes in the Philippines, but at different prices. This is because, again, we reflect the cost of losses and the cost of congestion. So that is how we arrive at the locational marginal pricing. So normally, at normal condition, this is how we do the schedules or the dispatch scheduling. So we, the market operator, would submit the generator schedules to NGCP, the system operator. Now, the system operator would dispatch the generators based on the submission of the market operator. So now the generators now know ano yung schedule nila at this particular hour. So electricity would be produced based on that schedule. So the DUs, the participating participants in the WESM as the wholesale customers will now receive their electricity based on the generation schedules that is provided by IMAP. Okay, so there are also conditions that would affect the market, for example, market intervention and market suspension. For example, there are natural calamities or our system would fail. So those are possible emergency conditions. So the impact is that if there's intervention in the market, then it would be the NGCP or the system operator which would handle the scheduling and dispatch. Okay, so we also have project in the WESM. We call this the Enhanced WESM Design. So right now we do the dispatching every hour. So 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. So that is how we produce, that is the interval in which we produce our list of generators or generator schedules. But at the Enhanced WESM, this is on the June 26 already, it would be a 5-minute dispatch interval. And this is to lessen intra-hour deviations and reduce imbalances. Again, there are a lot of things that can happen on an hourly basis. For example, a generator would fail, transmission line would fail, for example, or would overheat. So a lot of things can happen in an hour. So at the 5-minute dispatch interval, we have more accurate forecasts. We can see the status of the grid more accurately. So that would also result to a more efficient scheme in the market. So again, this is more on the settlement sides, but all of these enhancements are designed in order to increase the efficiency in the market. So we've talked about the wholesale part. So that is the wholesale part or the aggregate level part. Now we go to the retail competition and open access. So we have the wholesale part, which is provided in Section 30 of RA 9136 or ETIRA. But we also have the retail part. So we have wholesale, we have retail. And it is also provided in RA 9136. So again, this is the wholesale part. You've seen this already. And this is the wholesale part, meaning this is the bulk, the aggregate, the large volume portion of our energy industry. And now we have the retail part on the consumer side. So before, again, we only have the captive market. So if you're connected to a certain distribution utility, you don't have a choice kung sino kukunin ng distribution utility mo. For example, si Meralco, gusto niya si ganito. Of course, we have a competitive selection process and it would go to ERC. But generally, you don't have a say on who would supply your electricity because you're a captive market. But on the retail part, we now introduce a concept of competitive market. So we have the captive market before, we don't have a choice, but now we introduce the competitive market or the ERC calls this, in our side we call it ARCOA, but the ERC calls it the competitive retail electricity market. So now with retail competition, our customers who is actually eligible, so not everyone right now is eligible to be part of ARCOA, but with contestable customers, these contestable customers, right now, if your average demand is 500 kilowatt monthly, then you are now entitled to join the ARCOA scheme or the competitive customer scheme. So that is the difference in ARCOA. And if you're a contestable customer, what can you do? So if you're a contestable customer already, then you can choose the supplier of your electricity. So we have what we call the retail electricity supplier or RES. So they're like middlemen. So we are the customer, we talk to the RES or the retail electricity suppliers, and the RES would talk to the generators. And that way you have the control now of the supply of your power. So ARCOA, we call this the power of choice for your choice of power. So you now have a choice whose generation or what generators would meet your demand requirement. Okay. So without retail competition, electricity cost is based on DU contracts and supply management. So all costs are passed on. But with retail competition, it would be based on the negotiated terms with your suppliers. So we have a lot of rest now in the market, and you can actually negotiate with them. For example, you're a customer that is very environment friendly. So you want your supply of power from renewable energy plants only. So that is possible. If, for example, you're a customer that is consumes more at night, then you can actually negotiate with your rest um, in order to have an arrangement that would best supply your needs. So that is possible. You now have the power to negotiate the supply of your power and the prices of that power, so that it could be advantageous to your needs. Okay, so we have also supplier switching. If you don't like your supplier anymore, then you can actually switch. That is also possible. So who are the customers eligible for this? Again, currently it is actually 500 kilowatt average peak demand for the past 12 months. This is not true anymore because the ERC, the timeline for this actually has been amended by ERC. So we don't have yet the new timeline for our household and retail aggregation. But what we can say right now is that the EPIRA, actually the ultimate goal of EPIRA is that we bring this ARCOA, this scheme, towards the household levels, towards the consumer level that we have right now. So not only these large consumers, but towards the household level already. But we don't have a specific timeline for that yet. Okay. So I think that is my last slide already.